I'm Brett Altergott, Flagship Recreation. Many of you have come across that are sitting here. Jill Moore was supposed to do the presentation. Some of you have seen Jill from Landscape Structures. Phenomenal. So you got the B squad today. I'm going to try to go through this presentation that Jill is very proficient in. I'm just starting with it. So if I look like I'm reading, I probably am. But the whole goal is, if there's things that you have questions about as we go, I just like to kind of have you guys ask those as we go. And I'll repeat them because of the recorded, if that's not going to pick it up. Again, so today's presentation, it's going to focus a little bit on play, but it gets into a lot of things with park development as well. So everybody plays. As we know, there is a ton, like my parents' age. So you have the baby boomer generation out there now. They're aging. There's a lot of Gen Xers. So it's like, how are we building our facilities today? So it takes a global look, but then kind of comes down to, of course, in our wheelhouse play. But we're putting a lot of, background of total park development into that. So if there is, again, anything that you guys have experienced as well, or you're doing in your communities, I would love to hear it as we go through this. So for some of you, what brings you here today? Is it exactly that? Your communities, you're aging, you're going through park redevelopment. I know if Fridley you are, John, you and Crystal. Is that mostly, you see this transition happening in your communities? Okay. So kind of the way this, slide here goes. If you look, just kind of going with, multi-generational needs, consisting and relating or involving more than one generation. Very simple. But we are seeing in today's society, and we'll have some slides, but I'll touch on it right now a little bit, is you're seeing households with, 2 to 3, not just like what we're used to with families, but parents and grandparents and sometimes great grandparents. The housing market is building differently. But we're looking at, based upon as of July 2018, kind of in the millions of where we're sitting. So of course, we're losing that greatest generation. The baby boomers are still, at that point in time, we're at 75.5. You kind of see, here I am a Gen Xer, we're there. All of a sudden, millennials, you see that as a huge group. Right now, the largest, bigger than the baby boomers. And then these Gen Zs are not too far behind. So we have all of this. If you think about in a park system, what we're doing today, we have quite a wide age range to be working with. So Jill picked this video. So this is it's a funny little clip from the Ellen show, just kind of showing some of these differences. So let me see. Oh, it's not working. So I'm going to skip that because the volume's not really there. Because it's coming off the projector. So anyway, what the whole thing was, they asked these 2 ladies. So one is a kind of baby boomer and one's a Gen Xer. And they were just asking these questions like to the Gen Xer, can you name all 4 Beatles? Named 1, right? They asked the baby boomer like a Tinder, like how do you swipe for a date? Like if you really want to see someone, it's just kind of showing they didn't know anything about each other's generation, right? I mean, there's a total breakdown, and it was done in kind of the funny way that Ellen would do that. So it was a great kind of clip to kind of just show there is that disconnect going on. So how do we bridge that? So what we're saying is clearly there's always something we can learn from each other, right? As a former park and rec director and government employee, I know as I worked in my senior centers and our active adults and older adults, whatever you want to call it, we were always trying to get, that multi-generational, have the kids from the elementary school come in and participate, whether it was joint art projects, almost like the mentoring from the seniors. But that was probably one of the most joyful days that they had, right? Well, of course, we had to manufacture this. And now what we're saying is we can get them on the same page. We can have activities, and you're seeing more and more of this in our park system. So our learning objective today, identify the necessity of intergenerational spaces and their importance in all communities as our population ages. Again, you kind of saw in that first infographic there, we have some pretty significant size of groups that we're trying to program and plan for. We're going to identify the benefits of escaping ageist beliefs in promoting an active society, just the ageist beliefs. It's just something out there, and I'm guilty of it. Like, as I read it every single day of my life. Best practice designs elements to support multi-generational park design with a focus on fitness, experience, engaging with nature, playable art, functional facilities, and the play space itself. So the rise and necessity of intergenerational interaction. Jill, this kind of had, from Calvin and Hobbes here. It was a great little piece. So why? We want our design spaces to be more than practical. We want them to be usable and promote a healthy engagement, right? As I've worked with a lot of you and a lot of other communities, we're looking at how that play space and how that park and how everything is kind of functioning together, knowing, that there's grandparents and so forth that are involved in taking care of the kids. It's a huge thing that's out there right now. Let's see here. So with this, by 2050, 2 billion people will be over the age of 60. That's a lot. It's a lot of people if you think about it. Kind of put this in perspective. We look back at the population over age 65 in 2010. So here's 2010. Kind of see the different percentages and where we're lying here. Fairly in that that light green area. By 2020, you can see the map's getting darker all over the place. Minnesota's younger than Wisconsin, but you can see where there's those pockets of aging are. And looking ahead at 2030, again, it's continuing to get darker, right? With, again, 65 and over, people are living longer. Of course, you got the end of the baby boomer generation kind of moving into that age bracket. So we're going to look at this. You kind of go back and age integration in society, right? It used to be a fairly integrated society. Kids worked, right? I mean, you go back, Depression era, kids were working. This was a common thing that you saw out there. So you always had the interaction between the young and the old happening at all different phases. Not that it was right, but we had this integration, some for the better, some for the worse. And now what you're seeing is these age groups. Economics is a huge driver of independent living on both the senior and millennial right now. Has been driving us back into a state of a multi-generational housing, right? Almost all the communities that you're in, how many are building apartments and we'll call it senior housing, get away from owning the house, don't have any maintenance, things of that nature. We're seeing that, but we're also seeing, so I live in Lakeville, and one of the things, so the neighborhood I'm in was your standard neighborhood coming out of the recession. One of the developers, D.R. Horton, put in a new neighborhood one street over, and a lot of the houses have an apartment in the front. They have the 4-car garage, and then they have this apartment, and it's for this multi-generational scenario that we're talking about, whether it's going to be a kid that's going to stay at home longer or the parent, so that you have the grandparent moving in. But these houses, there's a number of them, very specific, because we're seeing more and more. Sometimes it is, you can't afford it, right? Forget it, you can't afford it anyway, right? Housing has just exploded. So we're seeing more and more of that. So there's a lot of households. I mean, even new neighbors across the street from me, I think there's 3 generations living in that, or maybe 4, depending on how you count it. But family moved in, and big family. So multi-generational households, 1 in 5 of American households. So that's more than the 2 generations living under one roof. So you start thinking about that. As 41% of Americans buy homes considering accommodating elderly parent or an adult child. So that goes back to some of the inclusive play that we talk about. These kids are, if they have any disabilities, let's say I'm just going to throw Down syndrome out for a moment, they're going to live a lot of times with their parent. Some move to transitional housing, but a lot of parents do choose to keep their child at home with them. Well, they're living longer, right? Health care is better, the treatment, everything. They're living. So you're seeing more of that. And then you get in a situation where, like we've all experienced, our parents are aging. What are they going to do? And then one unfortunately passed away, the one is alone. So now you have grandpa or grandma or aunt, uncle kind of moving in with you. So why the rise? So we talked about economic conditions, right? We know that that is a huge factor right now. We're all dealing with it every single day. Costs are rising exponentially in everything. And if they're on a fixed income, that economic conditions probably could force some older adults that were on Social Security to have to sell their home and either move into one of those facilities where maybe rent is better, or they're going to move in with a family member. Immigration. The family that I was describing that moved in across the street, they're immigrants. So again, multiple generations have moved in. So we're seeing a lot of that, especially as, again, we have more immigrants, people seeking asylum in this country. Slower starts, this is a big one. Remember the movie Failure to Launch back in the day with Matthew McConaughey? Slower starts, people are getting married later. There's a big reason too. So like, I graduated college and I got a job right away and I was on my own by like 22, right? Well, now kids can stay on health insurance until they're 25. They're transitioning, they're in school longer. So they're living at home during this time. They're not out having an apartment. They're kind of finding themselves yet. Health and disability issues. Again, that can happen at any time. Sometimes it's a temporary situation, and sometimes it becomes like, okay, here's what we have to do. This is going to be a permanent living situation. And then availability of kin. So I'm on the side where all my family's 5 hours away. If this ever happens, my sister gets mom and dad. But it's availability sometimes of family. And this is a big one. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but this is continuing to grow. But the last time we checked it, 40% of grandparents are providing childcare. You seen that in your communities? I do. When I go to, I'm going out, I'm looking at some of your facilities, taking measurements or whatever. I would venture to say, it's probably more like 60% of the time I see the grandparents out there with the younger kids, right? Mom and dad are at work and they have the younger kids that aren't in preschool. In the summer, of course, they're all over the place. We're seeing more and more of that. Again, because daycare is so expensive, the grandparents are helping out. More so, when I was a kid, I went to grandma's when mom and dad wanted to go out like once a month, and I stayed at my grandpa and grandma's. Now, these kids are with their grandparents almost, probably more than sometimes, than with the parents. So benefits of integrating areas for all ages and creating shared sites. I mean, this one kind of makes me, this one here, retirement, the role-less role, right? How many of you right now, raise a hand, have a date or an idea, I'm going to retire, right? I look at this and over the last few years, I'm like, I don't know if I can retire, not because of economics. What would I do? Oh, nothing, great, not a lunch. It's like, what are you going to do? We all have this purpose, but we're saying, in absence of well-articulated age-appropriate expectations, standards, behavior, basically what it comes down to is when we're working, we have structure in our lives. And all of a sudden, one day, every day becomes Saturday. And next thing you know, it's like, what do I do? And so I look at this, and that is a huge thing that we're doing. Some people are really good. They have like this hobby and they just go all in on it. And then there's others who literally sit and you're like, get a hobby, right? So we're trying to find that because they're trying to find themselves and what that's going to be. So this is the one where I said ageism. Yeah, Jill put on there. What's the deal? So it's a prejudice people have in regards to the older generations not believing they are fit to contribute due to age or in health, bad health, assume that they have memory, physical impairments due to their age. But it's also how we look at ourselves. So when I said, I kind of have that, there's many times I get up and go, gosh, just getting old, right? I'm talking myself down, right? Yes, I gained weight. I used to be able to run and do all these things, but it's like I'm putting myself down. And so part of, when you do that, it's not healthy for us to do that to ourselves. But I know it again, as people get older, I catch myself doing it with my own family. My dad is 72 and I'm like, Dad, I got this. You don't have to do this anymore. We're doing something. Well, that's not helping him. That's just more like, okay, I'm useless now. Right? Like, okay, so now, it's one of those focuses I have when I'm working with him. Yes, he has some limitations, but now I want to say, okay, Dad, I need your help. Right? And sometimes when I did the brakes on his car, he was handing me tools. It was the opposite. And as a kid, I was handing him tools, and now He's handing me the tools, doing his breaks. But I had him involved and said, say, sit in the house, I'll let you know when it's done, right? He would have felt useless. He was happy to just be handing me tools. So ageism, prejudice in our future stuff. That's where I was going. People with ageist belief live 7.5 years less than those with a positive outlook, right? It's pretty true. So you see, again, you get in that retirement age and the person is just like, oh, they have nothing to do. They're almost like looking forward. Again, I have some personal experience. My wife's grandmother's 96 years old, still drives her car, can get out and do things. I feel like she's going to live forever because she's just a busybody that way. She's never been a victim. Still mows her own lawn, like all of that stuff on her riding lawnmower. She does not subscribe, and she's living proof of that. And I've seen other people just kind of go and sit and have everyone do something for them. Have less chance of bouncing back after a health setback. Yeah, let's face it, positive outlook, because a lot of times getting that is getting back into doing something physical, right? So after a health setback, oh no, I got to relax, I got to sit, I got to do this more. And then that increased risk of dementia because we're not using our brains the way we did before. Like we're active every single day right now. We're problem solving. If you don't keep doing that, you kind of, the brain is a muscle too. It needs to be exercised on a regular basis. And playing on a screen or TVs, some of it works, but there's nothing that beats probably still doing a crossword puzzle the old-fashioned way. Exercising that brain, but having something for them. So as we kind of look at shared sites, we're learning to value each other through interaction. This is where the field of Parks and Recreation really kind of comes in, right? A lot of our facilities, yes, you look at that playground in this photo and there's something for kids, right? Yep, we focus on that, but there's also a lot in here for parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever. So design is about all of that. And so it is having benches, it is having shade, it is having shelters and reasons to go picnic again. So we want to keep them engaged in society. And I think what we found coming out of COVID over, I would say, late 2019, people start getting back out. I think there's been a huge reinvestment in parks because we saw people go back into parks at a rate. I just witnessed the trail system where I live, the parks and the activity happening outside. It was way higher and it's continued to be higher post. You always had excuses. Oh, I got to go to soft or bring my kid to basketball, this, that. People are back out in the parks. And now we're seeing that investment back into parks. Communities like Fridley, you had a bond pass, right? Lakeville had a bond pass. Apple Valley's working on. So there's a lot of communities that have come back and again, are asking the public to reinvest, and it's passing, resounding yes for the most part. So I know where it's going. So 92% believe intergenerational activities can reduce loneliness. 100%, right? As the generations age, think about it again. If you have like I have one grandparent left, okay? If we were not involved, like my sister, myself, calling, bringing her out to dinner and doing all that stuff, she doesn't have a lot of friends left anymore. So intergenerational, she gets the most joy when not, it's like, yeah, although I'm her grandkid, she gets more joy out of her great grandchildren now. They entertain the daylights out of her, and it takes a lot of stress off of us for that little bit of time. And she loves it. 2 in 3 Americans want to spend time with people outside their age group. We're seeing, again, more and more of that. I think, we are valuing being with our parents, our grandparents, and or younger. As I've now into this demographic of almost 50, some of my younger coworkers, I enjoy, like it used to be, gosh, they're so young, how's it gonna go? They kind of give me some energy back, just with the way they look at things, and we have to embrace that as well. So it's not like you just got to hang out like when you're in school, you hang out with like 4th, 5th, whatever. I'm even seeing it again. I have a daughter in 8th grade running high school. She's hanging out with seniors, can be a little, but it's been really good. She's learned a lot. She's grown a lot socially in that respect. And then 89% believe serving young and older adults in one location is a good use of resources. So again, kind of going back to our facilities, our rec centers, our senior centers, whatever, active adults. Again, kind of having some things in one area, that is a good use of resource. We don't have to have, this is for the kids, this is for the older adults. We can have these facilities that meet all of these needs, and they can cross over. So this is something, if we were to put this in that livability index, aarp.org, kind of show you where you score. It's kind of a good kind of idea. Is your community kind of meeting those needs as you've developed into your park system, into your rec centers, and those type of things? Kind of get this score. Again, anything that's out there, yeah, there's a possibility. It could be eye-opening, and you're going to agree with some of it, or maybe none of it. But it's a great a tool that you guys can use. It talks about transportation, safe and convenient options. So it's not just, it's about the transportation corridors to shopping, groceries, those type of things. Is it safe? The environment, clean air, water, health, those type of things. Health is prevention, access, quality. Do they have to travel long distances? Again, you see all these health centers popping up, especially where there's all these apartments now, right? All of these multi-family living units. You're seeing more and more of these healthcare. I mean, right now where I live, there's 3 under construction. All of them are near these new developments that have gone in, geared towards the older adults. We're going to look at the engagement, civic and social involvement. What is their access to that? Most communities, if you're not on the bus line, how many of you have some type of transportation? When I worked for the city of Lakeville, we partnered with Darts, and we got a van, and we partnered with another facility in Burnsville for a shared van to get our older adults around. When I was in Germantown, Wisconsin, we had a van service. I had a person running people constantly all day and bringing meals to their homes. But an opportunity, inclusion, and possibilities, right? Again, they're going to move to a community because there is something for them, and it's not just to go sit there, age, and just bleed out their time. They want, they want to be involved. You want them to be social. You want to give them that place. People make fun, but it's cards. Now pickleball is huge, right? I mean, there's a whole generation of baby boomers, and I never thought my parents would play, but they're playing. I never thought my mom would give it a snowball's prayer and what, but yep, she's out there and she's playing and she golfs and does that. So you're seeing a lot more of that happening, and that all kind of goes into this index. So we're going to look at best practice elements to support multi-generational park design. So Jill had just a little story here about a dog park she put in there. They're focusing on separating age groups. They kind of like pets have their own areas, right? We have our 2 to 5 and our 5 to 12. But as you see in a lot of designs now, we're kind of pulling that together, and the littles play with the bigs, and we do have some physical separation with use zones and stuff. But we know that they transition. It's the same thing when you do inclusive design. You don't take and say, we're going to put kids in the wheelchairs, we're going to put them over here, and we're going to do this. So this whole thing, so again, that dog park analogy going, yep, small dog, large dog. You see more if you have the little dogs, you give an area, but the rest of it, just open it up and let them run. You're seeing that out there now. So it's just kind of a way we do it. Kind of that in dog parks, we do have some separation, but it's not always good. It's when we get that, again, that integration, that socialization. We see it with, again, our animals all the time. As humans, very similar. So landscape structures, we're working with a lot of cities. We're creating parks and public spaces for all ages. Some partnerships that we have, of course, the Trust for Public Land across the board, they're a great resource. AARP has been a good resource, and they're with that Fit Lot. I'm going to pick on John Alholm back here. Right now, we're looking at for one of your parks, doing basically the Fit Lot. So we have a fitness pod with a shade, and it's activated by Fit Lot, which has videos and training. You can get an instructor, and it's programmable, right? So you think about it, you put it in the right facility. Now there's you can have outdoor fitness classes using the Health Beat equipment, and it's all based around it. And we have it as a package. Well, it all started because AARP had a vision to put that fitness component in one community in every state. FitLot is who they partnered with. They did that, all 50 states. The one in Minnesota is in St. Paul. We now work with them, and we have the package that we can go out and bring to the market. So a lot of those partnerships, and again, they did all the research, they did all the videos and all these things, and then they support that outdoor programming. Yes. Yeah, that's right. We're going to physically separate it by what pathway, the kind of division, or a patio, right? Just so we do have some physical, but if the parents were there, they would be able to, be on that equipment, watch their kids, they can get a workout in, or it's not too far from your community center either. If you wanted to kind of make it from a recreation programming standpoint and work that in. So it's really kind of neat. It's for us, we've always had the health beat, but how the package was put together is really nice, and it integrates shape. So it's just kind of like well thought out. All right. So as we look at, again, design, we're going to look at, access, consideration, access, facilities, comfort, enrichment, and then intergenerational activities. Again, as you've done master planning on your parks, you're well aware. We're looking at everything, right? You may call us at Flagship, we're going to do this part, but we're working closely with other consultants, like Boltmink, WSB, SRF, all the different acronyms, because they're designing sometimes your entire site, right? And we want to fit within that. And so we work together well with them. We understand that whether it be the playgrounds, benches, shelters, whatever that we're providing, it does need to fit the entire environment. So going to kind of look at access here. How we access. So here's New York, Brooklyn, New York, right? I mean, you can just imagine they're underneath the train. So how are they accessing that? So as Jill writes, I'm not familiar with this park, haven't been there, but it's a pretty neat park that actually she went up and looked on Yelp, and it actually gets some good reviews, how easily it was. So she just kind of circled right up here, combination of little kids to big kids to adult fun options. The south side is excellent playground equipment, generally protected, right? So it got a positive Yelp review. I mean, you've seen anything lately, the Yelp reviews everything, right? But people are out there and they're commenting, and yeah, you do want your park system to rate like this. You do want something new that you take into consideration all the different age groups. Depends on your park, but planning parks on bus and public transit routes. I think that's important. Again, you talk about equality of access. That's going to be a big portion. Now, where I live, the bus line stops. It's the bus rapid transit. That's it. It gets people, to the other buses and trains so they can get to work. So we don't have public transportation in Lakeville. So we have more parks, right? We try to have everything accessible by a path. But a number of you do have busing running through your communities, making sure that it is along or very accessible shortly, from that area is going to be important. So they're just kind of giving some examples here. And I think, again, depending upon if you're in Minneapolis and St. Paul, it's going to be a little bit different. You're in the suburbs. John, do you guys have public in Crystal? You guys have the bus line running through? No. Okay, and it goes right by Becker, doesn't it? Yeah. Fridley, you guys have it too? Okay. That's what I thought. I mean, when I'm driving around up there, I tend to remember, but I mean, you guys are kind of in that ring, and then you get a little bit further out, and it gets a little bit harder because then it's just on, like, again, if you're in Apple Valley, it's on Cedar Avenue corridor. The buses aren't running all over, but it is important that we provide access. Design for temporary disabilities. And we talk a lot of times when we're doing these inclusive, and we are focused of kids with permanent disabilities, but there are temporary disabilities. This is Lynn at LSI. Looks like she had a foot surgery or something, had to go around on the scooter. So a lot of things that we have to take into account, not just in a playground, but in public spaces, that we're going to have situations like this. This young lady hurt her knee, right? She's got a knee brace on for a little bit. Maybe can't do the things that she did a week before, but she's going to progress going. But we still want to give access to them. This is a big one. This is where, when we work with consultants outside of just the playground, we are looking at this parking. It is a huge component. And I know I look at it as a former park director. Some of the shortcomings I had in design of parks with parking. when King Park was built, we had an inclusive playground, and I had a parking lot. I really wish I would have had that curb gone. I have a curb. Why? Because engineers said, we got to move water. Like, I think we could have found a different way, because what we have is just a few area centers. So this is going to be, access, space placement, gradual slope, smooth pathways, right? I love this design for ease of getting in and out. It is not just kids. Think about the adult, again, aging population don't move as well, right? Some of them have walkers. Now that's a safe way for them to get in. Again, we're starting to see it. So here you have a seamless transition. Here's what we're used to seeing, right? Every intersection, most of our park systems, right? This is ADA. We have a ramp, we have a way. Look what Target's doing, right? Think about it. Now you're going to see this. You go to Target, it's that smooth, seamless transition. They have the big concrete balls just to kind of act in case someone want to try to drive through there. But they have these smooth, seamless transitions in multiple locations. And then they do have some curbing later to kind of move the water. But you start to look at these things, and that's coming more and more into park design, right? Go that parking lot from the last slide, right? Now we're starting to think, like, okay, we have to have accessibility all the way through. And it's not just meeting, again, that lowest common denominator, which is ADA. Yeah, so just through like, this little car in there, right? That's what that would be. So she's a big fan of, again, with her being in a chair, that she can, like go to Target. She likes that access. She's big into that. We need space to maneuver and engage. Again, just think about, that's why sometimes we have safety zones, but also spreading out the equipment. Look, father and daughter having fun. I mean, it's a cozy dome, and he's playing like peekaboo, right? Hopping on top of it. But you got to have the space. Like if something else is right there, that it wouldn't be great. So space maneuver is awesome. As we've done different things, you're going to see, we talk about double wide ramps a lot, right? We do a lot of landform, but we still have ramps in our design. But look at what the difference a double wide to a single wide makes. And this happens to be a double decker with decks, but now they can be side by side coming in and out. So it can either be side by side or traffic passing, right? You maybe won't do it for everywhere, but you're going to have areas where it's going to make sense to double wide to a single and traffic patterns. But ease through the space is key, right? Then you get into clear pathways. This is a project that I had the privilege of working on shortly after I started with Flagship. This is in Cottage Grove. Go greater than the standard with sidewalk requirements. And then what we did here is this blue path here, that's the accessible route. So many chairs, that rise to run meets all the standards, but there's so many different routes, but it's a visual cue of where to go. We've done this on other projects, but this is probably one of the largest examples that we have that us as Flagship here in Minnesota have done. Jill loves this one because right away she picked up on, here's my path and here's how I wheel around this thing. And she brings a lot of tour groups there when they come in for like Miracle League tours of LSI. This is always one of the facilities they go to. Now that last slide had topography. What you couldn't see is we went from 0 to about a 6-foot elevation change over the course of that site. We're saying, but topography can be used to create gradual slopes. Look at this fun at daycare. They go down, they run back up, they go down, right? We're giving them, again, utilizing that slope. Now we don't have decking. We don't have some of those things. It's a great way to have play. It is accessible. Again, you see that little kid? Burn that energy at them. They're out there for 20 minutes and it might be nap time right after. That's perfect. Another one of projects of ours, this is Central Park Maple Grove. Again, using board in place is the blue, synthetic turf mounts. And if you've ever been there, what you'll see on a busy weekday, you'll see the parents either playing kids or sitting there on a hill and just kind of like on their blanket or whatever on these turf hills, just relaxing, right? So, but having that, again, it adds an interest. And then in the background, you can see we're using a lot of different, we have concrete, we have the GFRC, and we have poured in place. There's every single material out there. There's sand, there's poured in place, turf, you name it, it's at that facility. Out in the Seattle area, and taking into account there was some topography, but now someone with a disability can very easily get into the top of a tower, which is usually very difficult, and go down that big slide and repeat, because we're bringing them in, making it easier for them. So, kind of building that space. And then there's, with that, they're sliding down the turf, and, they have all this, again, a lot of different activity between climbing, all the different senses, but again, taking into account to get to this point, which overlooks a bay, right? So the whole point is to get them to this high point. Everyone has that experience, whether you have mobility issues or not. This one out in Mesa, Arizona, was completed around 2018. That took a lot of grading to get this site, because it's flat as a pancake out there, except for in the mountains in the back. So when they built this is supposed to kind of replicate what's in the background. But again, a lot of topography, a lot of mixed material use going on here, theming to what's going on in the area. And here's another kind of look, just again, even down in the 2 to 5 area. Again, we talked about like some of the things. We'll get to a little bit more detail in a minute, but like shade is super important, not just in Arizona, but when I came back, the number one thing 3 weeks ago when I returned back to Minnesota, the first week, every single call that I took was about shade. How can we put shade in our communities, whether it was for a pool? How can I put this in my facility that I did not plan in 5, 6, 7 years ago? So we're starting to see that emphasis. Of course, they've been doing it in the South and East and West for a long time. It is making its way up here. And as we're talking about this aging in place thing, think about older adults want shade, kids, some of them that have different disabilities, they don't regulate their temperatures as well, right? So shade is increasingly important to design. So kind of again, looking at facilities, there's kind of Maple Grove. So the curb cut effect, designed for specific or vulnerable groups, but ended up benefiting all. So where we're going is, you start looking at this. Most of us probably have a bay in our homes, right? And we're starting to see more of this, right? All over the place. They have it here. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that was called out in the 2010 ADA update, option B, right? One, you get older, arthritis, we can't grip. This, we can push down, use our elbow, you name it. Makes it easier for ingress and egress. So you're seeing that more. Something as simple as a doorknob, now take that across how many different things. Not just that ADA, but we want to go beyond that ADA all the time. I just know that 2010 update, like every facility, how high your lights were, all of that. But I know that door handles were one of the largest that came out of that. Facility entrances, the vertical kind of push plates, the serpentine. You see that, the serpentine you see a lot at the airports, right? Big, open, easy for people to navigate. And then kind of having the push. There's still a lot of areas and facilities that have had to make modifications that might not be the greatest yet, but we're improving. But it's going to be important as you look at your facilities. You're even though it's in the open, you're going to be putting new permanent restroom facilities in. How are they getting in? You can serpentine, or are we going to have a button the door? How's that going to work? Bathrooms to accommodate different body sizes. I mean, that might be a little bit of overkill, but how many times have you seen they're kind of at odd heights and different things? And we have so many different ones out there. But point being, there's something for everyone here. And even, here with the different heights for sinks, we see that a lot, right? We're starting to see, in public spaces, the lower countertops, but they are bringing some back up because, again, it is challenging though, if you're not down there, kind of hunch over. So you're starting to see a lot of that creep into design, multiple different heights. This is a big one. How many of you have thought about adult changing facilities as you've planned your restrooms? Honestly, any of you? You did.
You just had a conversation about it yesterday.
Cool. It is something, in all honesty, I learned about from working with a group of parents that we were consulting with on a inclusive playground. They have some bigger kids. They're young adults. They're advocating everywhere, even when they remodel facilities, put these in. Everybody puts in the baby ones, but again, we're talking about some of these kids aging in place with their parents. If they get to 21 and they still need help, they were wrestling with them on public restroom floors. Not cool. So you're going to see more and more of that. You're going to see that from your other consultants, but if you're ever working with us on an inclusive, you will see this slide over and over because it is probably something that now that you see it, you're like, should have been doing it for a long time. Clear line of sight and visual access. Create height with topography and open space, but we still want that clear line, right? I mean, some of what we'll talk about is when you have again, any generation, people can move, right? So when we're designing inclusive playgrounds, especially for kids, what we need to really look at there is some kids are runners. So we need to have that clear access. So if you turn your back and turn for a second, you're not going, oh my gosh, where'd they go? And you got all this stuff. You still want a clear line of access for that parent. So being able to see where your kid, grandkid, in the case of, again, if you have a multi-generational, might be where did grandpa go, right? So you got to keep an eye on them too. Proximity to shelter. We talked about that a little bit. I think a lot of you are well versed in that. You just don't throw a playground out in the middle like we used to. It's just like, oh, playground's out in the middle and all the facilities. Everybody's looking at where's the shelters, where's the restrooms. We're looking at, okay, how does the surfacing, how does everything in the entire site all fall together from your parking, and has to make sense for your community. There's not a single way to do it, but again, almost everyone I've been working with, this is all a big consideration of what's going on. Where are we putting the support facilities? Are you doing on time? Okay, good. So comfort. I hear where I go with this, and what I find funny is a lot of projects, we can have benches. Where are all the benches? Where can I sit? Huge question. And I'm thinking like, that's a great question. You do it so you can relax, or you do it so you can play on your phone is usually kind of where I go, because you still want them paying attention, right? You want that clear access. But it is important. If you see any good design, you want to have benches appropriately located, or like those concrete walls that you can sit on or something, but you do want to have some level of comfort, and benches in shade are going to provide that. So a variety of seating for body types. It's not always just, okay, this is the bench that we get. I'm seeing, again, as facilities develop, more and more of these type chairs. There's seating areas more comfortable than your traditional steel, recycled plastic, lumber bench. It gets people to stay in the park longer. So anything that keeps them there longer is awesome. Also, this is all underrated, but underneath decks, underneath slides, quote unquote unusable space, you can put a little picnic here, you can put a little shop. Believe it or not, as adults, we're going, why would I do that, right? Well, kids will tell you, I love that. That's the imaginative play. They're having a picnic, they're in the shade, they're having a great time. But how many times you go into a park and there's a storefront and they're playing whatever type activity, it could be, oh, I'm at Target, oh, you're buying this and that, and they're taking the wood fiber and they're setting it on there and they're checking out the wood fiber and moving on. It is, to use that space is key. So kind of getting into shade, there's so many different ways. It's not just for comfort, but as I said, it is a safety concern. Adults over the age of 50 and people with disabilities are at greater risk for heat-related illnesses. Even just this week, we had 80 degrees and hot. In August, it was brutal out there in the 90s with high humidity. You step under, and my coworkers are here. When we were in Arizona, we stepped under that shade, that first one. It dropped, 20 plus degrees. It was 100 degrees. It was miserable. But we could all stay under the shade and have this presentation about whatever was going on. It was phenomenal. So thinking about that, doesn't always have to be, this grand shade here, but we can integrate it into a lot of different things, and standalone. Fencing. This is becoming, although we don't necessarily do that ourselves, we need to take that into consideration. What type of fencing, what fits best? Is it required because you do have a playground next to a parking lot, right? Just your facility is going to, what type of fencing? It's going to be chain link, it's going to be decorative. Some have gone more, natural barrier or stone, like almost sitting walls, but having a barrier. Using terrain to create gradual slope. What I like about this, playground's at the top and the amphitheater's at the bottom. Let's think about that. You want to go to a concert, are your kids really going to sit through the community band or something that a parent might want to, or supporting an older child? No. So the younger kids can go play and the whole family can be there. Go beyond the 1 to 16 when possible, multiple points of access. As Jill pointed out here, someone got there with their walker. So they have the synthetic turf, but they've made it easy for people with disabilities of any type to access this. And it ties into pathways that lead them there, not just top of the hill and ride the slope down and then work your way back up. It's all tying into an integrated path system. Activity height, select play events that adults can comfortably engage with. Here's a great example. Adults on the outside, there's a number of different components where adults can get right inside with them. I think of a we go around. Wheelchairs can easily get in, a parent can sit on a seat and they can have the shared experience. Or the parent can be on the outside and pushing them and giving them that experience, and they don't have to transition out of the chair. This is one of the early pieces of equipment called the Sway Fund, but I see it used like that. If you have one, you've seen that time and time again in your park system. Something as simple as helping on the zip cruise. Grandpa helping grandson. Boom, here you go. So we want to be able to make sure that the adults can assist so they can have that experience. So enrichment, we talked a little bit about that fitness component, right? There's a lot of different, this is the health feed equipment, what you're seeing again, whether it's that powered by FitLot one I was talking about, or independent, it has to be outside, but the playground is just across that sidewalk. So again, there's something for the adults other than sit on a bench and play on your cell phone. Programming opportunities. Talked a little bit, you have that FitLot, but most of you have, or try to, probably a neighborhood cleanup, right? So you're going to have ambassadors in your parks as well. Playable art. See that a little bit. But we want to make sure it's, larger in life and engages the community. It's just going to be something, it's maybe not going to be the highest play value in the world, but it is playable and it does bring something. It can be down in a downtown area, for instance. Here's some examples. This is Endeavor Paco Sanchez Park. Landscape structure did make this sign. You can climb in, play on it. That's a huge, supposed to represent a 1950s microphone. All the play is inside of the tower. So it's an artistic piece on the outside. You get in that thing, it's insane. It's huge. Put music in the bridges. You can tend to see a lot of different things going on between art, ramps, structure. Again, a lot of chances for that engagement. Challenge and thrill. It's simple, but let's face it. As adults, we've pushed. We go, oh, we got to make it safe. Well, we've had this trend coming back. Kids want to climb. If you don't give them something to climb, they're going to go climb a tree. And it's, obviously we're not going to provide the safest possible environment for them, but give them, space, that way it's also used longer. I can tell you, I have two 16-year-old boys and they'll never admit it, but they would still climb up in there and do things and find their way through. They're too cool to admit it right now, but they would go in there. We're seeing unprescribed routes. So some of you have seen this is Hedra. When it was introduced, we didn't see the equipment right away. They kind of showed these ribbons and kids, like different colors. And what it was all the different routes the kids took. There is not a single route or a single way to use this equipment. And a lot of the other designs, we want to have this continuous play loop that gives kids multiple options. But this equipment is a good one for, again, motor, planning, coordination, problem solving. Again, there's not a single route through this thing. It's phenomenal. Then you get kind of these big nets like this, the figure 8. Again, it's an artistic piece, a lot of challenge involved with that. It's not just a net. I mean, if you were in there, there's areas to climb, sit, swing. you name it. Transition zones, as we shift in life, we want to consider usable zones at these transition, for these transitions. Think of preteen girls here. What Jill is saying. They're too cool to play, but don't quite want to be away from the action yet. So what you're going to see, and I heard this from an elementary principal years ago, those young girls will sit at this top part and they'll perch. They want to observe everything going on around them. So they're in the know. We're seeing that on a regular playground, but also in some of these, kind of transition. Again, it's just kind of a neat piece, located in the center of a city. Pocket parks. We want to kind of bring some creativity. So, compact nature allows for activities near and around. Imaginative play allows adults to engage. And a fitness and challenge opportunities. So you look at something like this, Billows, we can put the smart play unit, but we're trying to put more imaginative. Some of you have a treetops. This is the Billows. We have another one called the Beachcomber. They usually have a little 2 to 5 unit, again, for this imaginative play. It's real. Again, as adults, we might look and think, why would I do that? Ask the kids what they like. They're the experts. Outdoor fitness equipment, we kind of talked about that a little bit. There's that other angle. Decide if you want to integrate that. In Arizona, there was a whole development going in, and they have pockets of fitness equipment along a walking path. Balance activities, again, as we talk about aging, getting that older population out is key. And so there's a number of those different activities. This is that Fit Lab, the community programming I was telling you about. Again, there's a whole set. They have bands and different things that go with it. It's great. Just due to time, I'm going to skip the video. But you've seen this, the Ninja Warrior courses. There's about a 3-minute video that was embedded in here. But this is not an all or nothing. You don't have to buy everything or nothing. You can buy individual pieces that meet your needs and program it differently. Here in Minnesota, the city of Plymouth put in their challenge course right across the street from Wayzata High School. And they also used some of the GFRC rocks and had them custom. It's a challenge course. It is used. A lot of the high school kids go across the street. The cross-country team and track team, they use it. It's fitting that need. It is a 13+ item, and it is being used as such. They've had a phenomenal response to it. It's along the Northwest Greenway Trail. So if you're ever in that area, just after you pass Wayzata High School on your left, it's the first driveway in of 2 to their trailhead. That's the video. We're able to use this at middle school. So this was the first one at Delano Middle School when they were rolling it out. Low effort collaborative. Often when you're watching TV, you see they're in New York, Central Park, and they're playing chess. Checkers, right? Consider that. I mean, those are great activities to bring people. And again, it's not going to be for every park, but think about some areas where that could be used. Community gardens. How many of you have community gardens? That I know I fought it for a while when I was in Germantown. Found a great place. We finally did a public garden, and now they put other facilities. We put an archery range before I left there in 2012, and now they put a big Oktoberfest building. So now you have your community gardens, your archery, the park, and it's a historical museum there as well. We took something that was nothing, and it all started because some people wanted gardens, and it's the only place that I had, and I fought it way longer than they should have. Again, wellness pass, you kind of think. If you look at the Cottage Grove, if you go back and we looked at Woodridge Park, they do have that little garden right off to the side. The city did that. And I see a lot of people just kind of wandering through and relaxing, and different plantings. It's really kind of neat. You see splash pads are becoming more and more like next to your large community playgrounds. You're seeing that integration. What they're going to get into is any splash pad, just like a playground, is going to have, a gentle zone, universal zone, and a dynamic if you have a recirc. And then intergenerational play activities. Swings. Those are great. This is that we go around I was telling you about. Can have multiple different age groups in there. ability levels, so forth, inside and out of this. Similarly, the global motion can be used in such a way. Classic Omni spin. Again, got sitting in the middle. Now we have a multi-user swing. Can they be safely integrated into play, that play space? How do we use it? So now kid in the chair. Think about the old one. You said, okay, it's a wheelchair swing, but you know what? It's dangerous. You got to go off in the corner, and you got to have a key to get in there. How in the heck is that called inclusive play? It is not. This swing integrates in a lot like the sway fund, has a very gentle sway on the bottom, and now allows kids that have mobility issues to be in the same play space. Different, again, swings with additional comfort. Here we have we saw. They can be on there again. I see more kids, again, adult parent, and kids just like hanging out in the middle and just bouncing all up and down. It's great. Music play. The nice part is this isn't that real tinny stuff that when your kids are little and they ding, ding, ding. This is actually tuned music. We have things that are a little bit louder, and then we have some stuff that is low tone, so the sound doesn't travel very far, especially if you're concerned in neighborhoods and so forth. That's a huge component, but music is such a great addition to a park. Literacy. You're seeing more and more of that can be integrated in anywhere. It's just a play panel. Instead of putting in a pipe barrier, you can put in a literacy panel. Could be, let's talk about healthy food choices. And then you can have that discussion with your kid. So, let's see, scavenger hunt. I know a number of you that I've worked with, you have the scavenger hunt. So you'll have this board, and then you can see there's badges. They have to go find them. Cool part about that is once they kind of figure it out, they're easy. You take the rivets out, switch them up, and put new rivets in. Then the kids think they know it, and they go running. Oh no, that one's not there. So you can change it up. It's not fixed that they have to be in that location forever. So what does this mean? So one, we're talking about design with people, not for them. Right? I have, in the last couple of years, as I transitioned from the south of Minnesota into the metro, I do a ton of community engagement where we're getting that. We're doing some original design and concept because you have to have something, but engaging, you're designing with them, not for them. The mistake that we see, and again, this goes back to my park cleaning days when I go, yep, that's that one. Okay, we're putting that in, remove it, right? Then people don't use it. If they feel engaged, I was in Crystal last week, phenomenal engagement. John, you had so much going on because you had so many projects. That was a great community engagement that night. There were a lot of great questions, and not only about the playground, but then, like how it integrated into all the other stuff that you had going on. Phenomenal community interaction. Because then it keeps parents happy, right? We want to do that. We want to keep kids and parents happy. I talk a lot in presentations being intentional, right? Design is intentional. Get groups invested and play together. So I think my time is up, and that is it. So any questions before he cuts me off? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's a lot of material, so hopefully I did okay. Yeah, Jill built that thing. She's a rock star for doing that. So thank you.